With me in the hot seat today is Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, a member of parliament and independent member of the Rajya Sabha. He is a true Bengalurian. He has his heart and soul in good governance and infrastructural development of Bangalore. He headed ABIDE, Agenda for Bengaluru Infrastructure and Development Task Force set up by the state government. He is the architect of Plan Bengaluru 2020, a comprehensive blueprint for the development of this great city. He also runs the Namma Bengaluru Foundation. Above all, he has lent his wholehearted support to Anna Hazare and his crusade against corruption. Welcome, Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Morning, Balram. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, you are one of the few MPs, rather the only MP, who came out openly in favor of Anna Hazare and his crusade. What made you take this stand?
No, Balram, let me correct you. I think there was more than one MP that supported Anna Hazare's crusade against corruption. So I think the general perception that there were very few MPs is wrong. But unfortunately, the party system and the political system in Delhi does not allow many people to speak their individual minds and individual
views. So as
an
independent member, it helped you a lot?
Yes, of course. I think it's easier for independent MPs to go against the grain, if I can say that, or go against what is politically correct or politically acceptable in Delhi. So to that extent, I was fortunate that I was independent, I am independent, and I could say it publicly what people were saying in private.
But what made you take that stand?
No, I have been writing, as you know, Balram, I have been writing, I've been speaking for the best part of the last 4 years, 5 years, ever since I got into parliament, that the challenge facing this country is not just about economic reforms, it is about fundamental changes in the way government functions. Yes. And that the connection between the government and the people seems to have broken and is established just once in 5 years during elections. And so I have been arguing the case that we need governance reforms. And while my arguments were maybe slightly more cerebral and slightly more high level, what Annaji and his team have done is really tapped into the exasperation and frustration of millions of Indians who are essentially thinking the same thing that you and I think, but are saying it in a very different manner, much more visible, much more vocal. And surprisingly, and most gratifying to all of us is that they were willing to come out on the streets and do.
Yes, Mr. Chandrasekhar, I want to tell you, coming out on the street, you saw young and old come out in large numbers to extend support to him. Did you expect such a wave? Or were you surprised by the sudden development?
No, to be honest, I will tell you that I was and I have been a little cynical and concerned about the growing apathy amongst all of us to what is clearly a problem in Delhi and in various state capitals. I mean, we all recognize there is a problem, but we've all in a sense become very apathetic towards it, and we occasionally in our living rooms vent our frustration. But that this would turn out to be such a sharp sign that the Indian citizenship is alive and the Indian democracy is alive and the people's activism at an individual level can be tapped into was a surprise for me, and I suspect it was a surprise even for Annaji and for his team that organizes. So it is a surprise, but it is one of those pleasant surprises. It's a surprise that we should all be very proud of.
Absolutely. Mr. Chandrasekhar, Congress-led UPA may have faced a lot of flack. But the opposition parties were no saints. They also threw hurdles to the General Bill. Like the Congress, they also felt that Parliament was supreme and the civil society cannot dictate terms. Don't you think the entire political class had joined hands to prevent the bill at one time? In the end, of course, they all had to bow before people power. Your opinion, please?
No, it's absolutely right. See, what are we trying to do here? What is Annaji trying to do? He is trying to change the political system. Yes. He is trying to change or re-architect the equation between people and government and people and the elected representatives. Now, when you are trying to make such a deep change, it is very clear that the other side of this change, which is the political class, will resist it, will be threatened by it, will be worried about it. Now, change concerns everybody. Change worries people, more so people who have a stake in maintaining the status quo of vested interests and this whole political, crony capitalism nexus. So I am not very surprised that the political class resisted it as much as it did. I think we must factor in to our own calculations that if you want to change the system, there will be resistance, and the resistance may come from very many different directions. But fundamental resistance will come from those in power, because they are going to be very, very reluctant to change the dynamics of how they rule and how they are answerable, or in what little form they're answerable. Nobody likes in government to have a spotlight put on them. And what Annaji and the people of India have said is, look, we want to know what you're doing. And so there will be resistance. And I don't think we should be surprised by it, but we must be smart about how to handle it.
Absolutely. Mr. Chandrasekhar, at a time when the government and the Anna team were at loggerheads, you went ahead and tabled the Jan Lokpal bill as a private member's bill. What was on your mind when you did that?
Look, it was very clear. I think it was very clear for the last 3-4 months that there were certain elements within the government that were relying on obfuscation, smoke screens, and spin to basically put forth a false theory, which is that the government Lokpal bill met all of what we wanted as citizens. And it was important that we actually, and that was tabled in Parliament, as you know, by the government with very little support for it, or very little support sought. My idea was that we introduce a Jan Lokpal bill and get parliamentarians and therefore people outside and who support and who are looking at Parliament to get into a debate about the pros and cons of both these documents and both these bills and both these statements of intent. And that was really, it was part symbolic and part an insurance policy against the government not listening to the voices on the streets.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, you also wrote to the Prime Minister that both governments as well as Anna's bills should be debated and voted in Parliament without the parties issuing a whip. That was the main thing. What had been the response of MPs then? I'm sure that they must have confided into private.
Yeah. No, look, I think most MPs today who genuinely, because I meet them on an every and in Parliament, most MPs realize that change is inevitable, that there is a process underway that is going to alter the dynamics of politics in India, that is going to, in a sense, bring back the supremacy of the voter and the people in the relationship between an elected representative and the voter. They are aware. Most people who are smart and who have a long-term view towards politics want to be part of that change. They want to be on the right side of the change. But unfortunately, the party system in our democracy is such that people who are at the top of a party, or many people who are in the top of an political establishment, can issue a diktat, which effectively says, look, you may have an individual view, but your individual view will be secondary to our political objective or political agenda. And that is frustrating. And that is why Parliament, this whole anti-defection bill and law has, in a sense, effectively suppressed the individual views of members of Parliament, which is actually anti-democracy, because each member of Parliament is representing a certain constituency of people.
Not just the party.
Not the party. And I don't know about how you vote, but I vote not just for a party, I also vote for the person. For example, in the last election, I endorsed Anant Kumar. I didn't endorse Anant Kumar because he belonged to A party or B party. I endorsed him because I know Anant Kumar and I thought he will be my best representative. So therefore, this anti-defection bill and therefore the right of a political party to issue a whip effectively undermines the ability of a member of Parliament or a representative of a person to effectively represent his people.
Absolutely. Now that Parliament has considered all of Anna's conditions, do you feel the government will act fast, or will it try to buy time again and again?
No, I see. We must expect that the establishment is not going to embrace change in a hurry. And it's just, I mean, let's be very clear. Let's be practical. Let's be pragmatic. We are asking the government system that has overseen or been part of major scams in the last 2-3 years to suddenly say, we will clean up our system overnight. So there will be some obfuscation, there will be some delaying tactics. But I think as citizens of India, we must stay the course, keep the pressure on, continue to believe that this change is absolutely inevitable and necessary for the future generations of Indians. And till the change is done, assume that the change is not done. So we have to just be involved till there is a Jan Lokpal bill in Parliament and all of the other anti-corruption institutional changes that we want. Till it's done, we need to remain involved.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, you have been very vocal on this issue. Will you be raising this issue now and then in Parliament to let the government know that we are all waiting?
No, I think I will. I have done it from 2006. Every speech that I have made in Parliament, every speech, if you made in Parliament has referred to the pressing need for governance reforms.
Yes.
So I will continue to say my piece. But you must understand one thing, Balaram, and this is the learning from Anna's movement, is that change will come not because one man's idea or two people's idea. You and me may have great ideas about what is right for the country. But when a million people or many millions of people say the same thing, and that idea resonates across the country, that is when the political establishment responds to change. Political establishments do not respond to change from however bright the idea may be from one or two people. And that is why the key for us is to get this to resonate and continue to resonate across as many millions of people as possible.